Now, initially, I wanted to talk about PreCure today because I was going to watch the third PreCure DX movie. However, upon trying to do this, my internet decided that it did not want to cooperate in any way, shape, or form. The movie would not load. I could not find a download of it that would work, and life is a nightmare that I cannot wake up from. So, instead, I'm going to talk for just a little bit, maybe just a little bit, about inFAMOUS, the video game. Hit video game released for the PS3 in what, like 2009 or something? I better actually check that before I just start talking. Nope, 2000. Yep, 2009. Okay, cool. I'm a god. inFAMOUS is a very fun video game, and it released in an era of a lot of open world games. I feel like the sort of open world city exploration games genre, it's not even really a genre, it's kind of a subgenre of open world games. It released at a time where there were quite a few of those coming around. That was really what was in vogue, I feel. You had your Crackdowns, you had your Just Causes. Some of the Marvel superhero games were very similar in setup. An Iron Man game was like that. Hulk game was like that. There were all sorts that were coming out like this, and a lot more that were going to come out after that were a very similar style of game. More recent examples being the Marvel's Spider-Man, the Miles Morales game, and Spider-Man 2, and the less recent, but still more recent than inFAMOUS, Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War, stuff like that. You get the idea. These games, I think they're pretty fun. I think that they are maybe not for everyone, because I'm sure not everyone enjoys being plopped down into an open world and told, okay, well, your mission is over on the other side of the map, so you could go over there and do that, but you gotta walk over there if you want it, because you don't have a fast travel spot over there. But the exploration of those games, I think, is a key element of what makes them so appealing. And maybe less the exploration part of it, because the collectibles tend to be just on the overworld, on top of buildings, or in boxes behind a building or something like that, because they're just set in cities. But the maneuverability of the character is a very important part of these kinds of games. And inFAMOUS, despite being a PS3 game released in 2009, while being a little clunky, which I honestly kind of part of the charm, it feels very good to play. It has some parkour elements to it, where Cole can climb up windowsills and then jump onto the roof, and then you run over to the edge and he'll climb up on the edge of the seal of the roof, the edge of the building, and jump down. And with an upgrade, you get slightly into the game, you can glide on electrical currents, because let's not forget, these games are based around a power set, and your characters having some sort of ability or tool that they use to deal with their environment and also to deal with the plot of the game. In inFAMOUS's case, the main power set that our protagonist has, Cole McGrath, is electrical powers. He has electrokinesis and some slight variations to it as well. inFAMOUS 1 sees Cole, a basically delivery boy. He's a news guy, not news, but like a postman who rides his bike delivering packages around the city. I saw something talking about sort of his background, saying that he had a career, I don't remember exactly what it was, that he then stopped, I guess in spite, or to spite his parents, and just started running packages around the city, because he's not a great person. He's a good person, but he's not like going out of his way to help people. He's kind of a little bit of a little jerk, but not in a way where it's dislikable, but in a way where it's like, all right, you're a little selfish. I kind of get it. You're existing a little bit on spite, but that's fine because you're doing your thing and you're happy doing it. He is to deliver a package that he then gets a phone call about, which is weird because why would he be getting a phone call about a package he was just told to deliver? That's odd. And the phone caller tells him to open the package. It was who he was supposed to deliver it to. He's like, well, that's weird. Okay, sure, whatever, man. The package then detonates and destroys about 6 city blocks of what is not New York City, but is basically New York City. And Cole somehow survives this blast despite being at the center of it. The package turned out to be effectively a bomb, but not in the sense of I'm going to blow up part of the city bomb, but in a lives are going to be sacrificed in order to awaken superpowers type of bomb. Because this is a special device that has been engineered to awaken abilities within people. The device is awakening or activating a gene within people who, if they have it, they gain superpowers. And if they don't, they kind of just die to the bomb. It's odd. It's a bit odd in that regard, but it's still fun. But Cole gets superpowers from this ray sphere device, and he awakens his electrokinesis, and they play fast and loose with what electrokinesis does. And I guess it's just kind of control of electricity, so he can kind of do whatever he wants with it. Whatever, man. It doesn't matter. But he then gets wrapped into all of the problems going on around the city after this has happened, because a virus, a plague starts occurring, basically. And the ray sphere has irradiated the city, and people are awakening to superpowers, and people are also just trying to go about their daily life, while also dealing with the fact that there are now monsters in the city. They're not really monsters. They're just kind of crazy dudes who start causing problems. They're like gangs on crack, except instead of being on crack, they are on shards of the ray sphere that blew up and trying to develop more superpowers. Because what are you gonna do if you have superpowers, I guess, is, get stronger superpowers. Maybe not the most perfect selling of the story of the game, but it is one that is very near and dear to me, and it is very enjoyable, I think, despite the oddities that it has in its story. The starter to the story, at least, as it gets going, I think it picks up considerably. Cole has a friend who has basically been his best friend for his entire life. He has a girlfriend whom he loves very much, who is kind of just mean to him. She's kind of just mean to him for a lot of the game. And he deals with that. He puts up with it. He doesn't seem bothered by that most of the time. But I don't know. I just feel like I remember her being really... It's been a little bit since I played it, but I feel like she was just kind of rude to him for a lot of the game. Like, he's going through a lot. She's going through a lot. I think they're having some sort of, not marital, but marital spat. And here, trying to work through things. He's trying to work through things. She just kind of is being a jerk to him for quite a bit of it. I'd have to go back and make sure that is actually the case, but it's not great for a lot of it. But that isn't the only problem, of course, because there is a guy with telekinesis running around, and he throws buses at Cole when you fight him, and there's a woman who has kind of mind control, but it's kind of it's goop, and she shoots goop at you. You fight her in a sewer. The bosses in this game are a little odd because a lot of the game is spent like shooting swarms of enemies with your electrical abilities and dealing with the gangs and the police and all of that kind of stuff. Because the kind of main premise of the game is the fact that Cole gets to choose between being a hero and being a villain, which I think the game doesn't do an incredible job of having nuance necessarily to its differences between good and evil. But what it does have is fun, especially for a game released in 2009. I think the choices that it gives the player to make are pretty fun and pretty interesting, especially because I feel like there, especially at the time, there weren't a lot of games that were allowing the player to say, you can be a good guy or you can be a bad guy. And it's not going to change how the game goes for you necessarily, but it will change key story moments and how the character feels about the game or everything he's going through, and how the public perception of your character is going to feel. As a conduit, this type of person who has awakened the conduit gene and has developed superpowers, Cole is feared and ostracized by everybody in the city. And they, for a while, you can just kind of get away with just walking around and only having trash thrown at you occasionally. But if you start to go a more villainous route, people will be afraid of you. The NPCs will run away from you, or sometimes they will throw trash at you or cans or whatever, and just kind of generally be displeased when you are around. If you are going the good route, they will sort of gather around and sort of cheer for you, and occasionally they'll be like, hey, cool, check this out. It's this guy. That's crazy. And all three of the games kind of go about this similar process of making your character appear heroic and beloved, or feared and villainized, and for good reason, because part of how you gain karma in this karma system is how you interact with the civilians. You'll come across civilians who are hurt and injured, and using your electrokinesis, you can heal them, I guess. You know, I don't know exactly how that works, but he heals them and they're better and fine. If they get hit by a car that explodes or by stray bullets, you can use your electrokinesis to heal them, I guess. It's really funny, but it works fine. And that gains you positive karma. And one of the things you can do when you are playing you can do it while you're playing the good route also, but it gains you evil karma, is an ability where you grab somebody and you have to play a little mashing mini game to force your hand onto their face as they try to push you off of them. And you absorb the electricity from their body and drain their life force. And it's really good because it restores your energy and restores your health. So, like, if you need a little snack when you're in the middle of a firefight and you're a little hungry, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do if you're playing the villain route. And each different route has a couple of different powers, not a ton of different abilities. They kind of minimize the amount of variation in what you get when you play as the good Cole or the bad Cole, which I think is fine. Overall, his power set remains the same. He doesn't gain different abilities if he's a good guy versus if he's a bad guy. He's just the guy who who has electrical powers, the route that you go. I guess you could consider being able to shoot a beam of lightning versus a chain of lightning that hits between multiple people. Different powers, mechanically they are, but it's still just a lightning attack because all of his powers are electricity. You know, you can shoot your little blasts of lightning or like a big old lightning rocket. Honestly, I think the most interesting power is the shield that you get, because eventually you just unlock an sort of a pulse shield that you hold in front of you, and it blocks projectiles and enemy attacks. And it's kind of interesting that the game chose to go that route, because being a third-person, primarily, I guess, shooter, despite the fact that you don't have guns ever, it's interesting giving the player a shield, because it kind of gives you a defensive option, but it makes you stop fighting to use that defensive option. It's not like you have a dodge roll, sure, but you have to pull up your shield and stop attacking to use the shield, rather than keeping you in the action. It's not an incredibly fast-paced game overall, which I think this shield is to its benefit in that regard. I think it's really cool. I feel like a lot of games don't just go, here, use your formerly only used to shoot blasts of energy powers to just kind of protect yourself and not take damage. And that's fun. I like that element of it. But if you wanted to, you could just throw grenades instead, because, yeah, just bundle up a ball of lightning and throw it at the ground, and it will detonate and blast everything around you. Oh, you upgraded it? Well, it'll explode bigger or more. And I think the upgrades that the powers get are also kind of neat. They're very linear. It's just tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 types of upgrades. And I think that, especially for the first game in the series, this is fine, because it just gives you a good variety of powers. It gives you a nice little amount of upgrades, while not overwhelming the player with options or making them feel like they need to go out of the way to get everything. Now, I 100%ed that game, and then the next one and the next one. And to actually 100% the game, you do need to play through both routes of the game. You do need to do a good playthrough and an evil playthrough. And I would highly recommend playing these games, because Infamous 1 especially, doesn't take too terribly long to get through. You can play through it in a couple of days, or once you actually know what you're doing, a couple of hours even, without focusing too much on collecting the upgrades and doing side quests and all that, because, kind of as mentioned earlier, the upgrades are point-based. You need to collect blast shards that are around the city to actually get enough energy to unlock the higher upgrades, which is cool because it gets you familiar with the city also. It's a really neat way to teach the player to explore, because the player knows that they need to explore to get upgrades to boost their powers, because they will then need those powers to fight stronger enemies in other parts of the map. And they are already familiarizing with various parts of the map before they even go into the missions, if they're spending time looking around the city for little side objectives and collecting these shards. And sometimes the city has random events that go on. In the way of the good and evil routes, the good and evil karma paths, sometimes you will run into, I guess, gang fights, basically, and you can take those guys down and put them in their place and pin them to the ground with electricity to restrain them. And then you'll get good karma for that, because you're helping stop people without killing them. And sometimes there are police officers around, and you can get evil karma by just shooting them. And we ACAB, but also if you want the good karma routes, you can't do that. So, you gotta consider your options. You gotta weigh your options, and that's okay. But it's kind of fun the way the game goes about those power upgrades, and the way that they build into the gameplay themselves. I think the story of the game is also something that is pretty cool. It might not be like the most groundbreaking type of game, but it's very fun. Spoilers for the game from here on out, but it's like a decade. It's 15 years old. even though it's a very good game, it's still worth playing also, even knowing the story, just because I think, despite a little bit of clunk, it is very fun to actually play the game. The basic premise after Cole gets his powers and he's dealing with all of this stuff is that the conduit gene is awakening in people, but that is more going on than just that, because a monster is going to appear in the city in an undisclosed amount of time. And in Empire City, I just remembered the name of it, you are being guided by a man who is serving as your antagonist named Kessler. And Kessler knows that this stuff is going to happen. He's kind of setting these things in motion. And a lot of the time is just kind of testing Cole. And you are encountering people who are... Everyone is kind of following their own purpose. Cole doesn't necessarily have one. It is what the player builds for him as the good and evil routes that he finds his purpose. And we come to realize that a lot of this is because Kessler is, this is mainly the spoilers for it, Cole from an alternate timeline, from the future. In said alternate timeline, this ray sphere bomb never went off in Empire City, but an event did occur that caused the conduit gene to awaken in the future. And this event was sort of an entity just known as the Beast. It is a nigh apocalyptic creature of incredible strength. It effectively just a conduit monster that awakens the conduit gene and started laying wreckage down on the city and destroying everything. And it was unstoppable. People tried to stop it. The military would try to stop it, and everyone fails. It just kind of starts destroying everything. Cole, or Kessler, takes his family, flees, and they go on the run. Eventually, he does try to stop it, fails, and when he tries to escape again, it ends up killing his family. And what Kessler then winds up doing is using a power he had and never used to go back in time, which is where things start to get kind of, well, hold on a sec, again, with the story. But it's fine. He's got electrical superpowers already, so, you know, what the heck, why not have a time travel superpower? He goes back in time and sets the events in motion, of the game in motion, but earlier than they are originally supposed to happen. So he detonates the ray sphere and helps people researching this conduit gene and this energy create the ray sphere so that they can then use it and create conduits earlier than what they were supposed to. Because Kessler knows that if Cole awakens his powers early enough and is forced to use them, he will eventually become strong enough to defeat the Beast, or at least that's kind of what he is counting on. And it seems to work in his favor. He does some horrible things to the city and to the people in it to get Cole to grow in power and sort of become ruthless in his use of his abilities and strength, because he wants Cole to have this heart of stone and the strength to back it up to defeat the Beast when it shows up. Because if that thing just shows up and goes rampant, it's going to destroy everything, and then it won't matter what's left. One of the most interesting parts that shows off Kessler's ruthless attitude towards making sure Cole is a hardened warrior is a mission pretty late in the game where Cole is trying to hunt down Kessler because he wants to beat him, because he's the root of all of these problems. And Kessler has kidnapped Cole's girlfriend. And Kessler gives Cole a choice. You can save just her and let 5, 10 other people die. He has them all strung up on top of 2 buildings, dangling, holding on for dear life. Whichever one, and he says that he will let Cole make the choice. So the player gets to then try to go save the building with multiple people on it, or the building with Cole's girlfriend on it. And I think this moment is maybe a little contentious, because there is some illusion of choice going on here. Kessler tells Cole that these are his options. The good route is to save multiple people. You do what is best for the greater good and help as many people as you can. The evil route is the one where Cole chooses to save just his girlfriend. And I don't think that this is... in the game, I think, doesn't go the way of showing, like, oh, you're a bad person for trying to save her alone. It shows that Cole is selfish in that regard, as anyone would want to do to save someone that they care for. But what ends up happening is, if you save the large group of people, you save them. I want to say they're doctors or something, or scientists or whatever. I don't remember. But you save them, they're grateful. You watch the other person fall off the building and die. And then you get to go over and have a heartfelt moment with her before she finally passes. And then Cole is pissed. But if you go the evil route, you go over to the one building, or the building with the one person on it, and you get them down, and you save them, and you watch the other building with a whole bunch of different people, and they all fall and die. And then you come to realize that Cole doesn't recognize the person that he's just saved from the building with the one person. Because if you choose the building with the one person to save, it is not Cole's girlfriend. If you choose the evil route, they switch where she is with one of the people on the building with multiple people. There is no option to actually save her in the game, despite the fact that it presents itself like you have the ability to. And I feel like a lot of the time with a decision like that in games, it kind of sucks, because you want to have that player agency, even if you are making a hard decision, a life and death decision in something like that. You want to feel like your character has agency in their decisions. And this, I think, is one of the few instances of this sort of illusion of choice removal of player and character agency that I like, because I think it goes to show the drive that Kessler has to be... He is a horrible person, but he wants to save the world through this sacrifice, and through sacrificing any chance at happiness that Cole had. Because Kessler's old as hell now. He has become very old over the years. He was alive for longer than the current timeline went by a while, and then he traveled way back in time. Not way back, but like several years back in time, so he could work with the first sons to develop the ray sphere. And he is also killing a woman he loved, because the woman that Cole is dating is going to become the woman that Kessler was in love with and traveled with until she was killed. And it is really tragic, the conversation that Kessler and Cole have after, because at this point Cole doesn't know that, and Kessler is not despondent, but pretty close to it in his conversation with Cole. And Cole, obviously isn't thinking anything of this because he is enraged. But it's really cool knowing after the fact that Kessler was Cole. And in order to try to fix what could be just a completely broken world, Kessler is willing to sacrifice everything he had and then do it again in order to try to make things right for the world in the future. He's not making things right for himself. The timeline he came from is not going to be fixed. It's interesting. The game doesn't really get into the sort of product or the design of time travel. Kessler comes back in time, but he didn't always come back in time because Cole, as we know him in the game, isn't going to become Kessler. He is the Cole who is going to then fight the beast when it shows up. He's not the Cole that then flees the city with his family and survives until they are killed because of the beast. But there's no, like, sort of paradox fixing going on. And it's also a little funny because it's the only instance of time travel in the games. The other two games don't address that this happens at all. So I'm wondering if it was a sort of a writing thing where they were like, this is really cool. And then they made another game and were like, we got to not address it because whoops, we may have done a oopsie there. I feel like the inclusion of time travel, while cool conceptually, can lead to a lot of problems of trying to make sure that it is consistent within the universe because of so many different media properties having various forms of time travel and dealing with them in different ways. I watched a video that was really interesting here recently about the forms of time travel in Futurama and the inconsistency that Futurama addresses time travel with, because there are various different kinds of time travel occurring in the show. And in any specific instance of it, it is consistent with itself. But the fact that they deal with time travel that results in time loops and time travel that results in a paradox destroying itself it's consistent each time, but it's odd that they have it both ways. They have their cake and eat it too. Infamous gives you a cake and then slaps the cake on the floor and says, don't worry about it. Forget about the cake. It was bad. I forgot that I didn't like making cakes. Which is funny at the end of the game when you fight and beat Kessler and then he reveals the truth to Cole. Because one of the interesting things they do with the conduits is that they are kind of psychic. Anytime one of the conduits, a prime conduit, as they are called, comes in contact with another prime conduit who has their powers awakened through their conduit gene, rather than through someone else forcing their powers awaken, or to awaken, or some other method of it, they can sort of get a vision of this other person's life and their experiences or their immediate thoughts. It's a very cool narrative tool. I like the way they use it in each of the games. Second Son, more so even than the first one. But I really like the way that it goes about it because it gives you a good way for the player and the character to know about this antagonist without them giving us a big monologue. They don't stand there and tell their tragic backstory to the player. We fight them, or we see their backstory, and then after the fight, we learn about their backstory, or after the fight, we learn their personal expression of why they're doing what they're doing, rather than just sort of having them tell it to us and being told this is why I'm the way I am. Just something about it, it feels much more natural the way that it is done in Infamous, which is, I think, one of the things I really appreciate about the games. They feel very grounded in the world they are set in. There is not a lot, while supernatural and dramatic and fantastical, there's not a lot going on that breaks the illusion of the world. And I think that is something that all three of the games actually do very well. The first one, especially, it is very gritty. It is very grounded. The city is muddy and dark almost any time of day. I mean, it has day-night cycles, and it doesn't just look bad the whole time. But it's also an early PS3 game, and anybody who's played PS3 games knows that a lot of them just kind of have very muddy palettes for some reason. It's a bit odd. I feel like it was part of an era of photorealism taken to the extreme, and when that sort of grittiness was in vogue. But I think being set in a big city like Empire City, not New York, and being so not desolate and not like dead, but on the brink of that kind of disaster, I think that sort of muddiness works well in inFAMOUS's favor. And I think the sort of drop of that element of the design and the art style, not entirely dropping it, but minimizing it a lot more for the second game, and maybe even more for the third one, works very well in the game's favor, especially the first one. It is gritty. Like, things are bad in this city, and Cole is just kind of the poor schmuck who has been put to deal with it. inFAMOUS is a really fun video game. I cannot recommend it enough, despite the age of the game. It is a little difficult to get to play in modern eras, though, is the problem. We haven't gotten a remaster of it, and honestly, I don't know if it's a game that's going to get a remaster. Sucker Punch is currently working on another Ghost of Tsushima game, Ghost of Yotei, and Ghost of Tsushima, oh my god, that is such a good game. But with this focus on those games, it's pretty unlikely that we get an inFAMOUS new one anytime soon, and seems pretty unlikely that we get a remaster. Currently, the main ways to play inFAMOUS are physical copy on PS3 or digital copy, but with the PlayStation Store on the older systems kind of, not being, well, I guess it's still around for now-ish. I don't, honestly, now that I say that, I don't remember if they shut it down or not, because I know they shut down the Xbox 360 marketplace, and that made me mad, because I was going to buy some Final Fantasy 13 too, and Lightning Returns DLC, and said, okay, I'll do it when I get to those games, because I'm playing 13 again, and then the marketplace shut down the next week. But the game is available on PS3. You can stream it through PlayStation Plus to PS4, PS5, and PC. So the easiest way to play it, unfortunately, would be to have a PS Plus subscription and play it on your computer. And that's not great. Like, this would be, it's very hard for me to recommend this game to people, because getting to play the game requires paying Sony for a subscription and then streaming the game. You can't just download it to your PS4, PS5, or PC. Especially PC. I don't think the PC PS Plus streaming has any sort of downloads to it, unfortunately. But man, this game needs a remaster. I don't know if it needs a rework. I think that my concern with a full remaster of the game actually would be that it just removes a lot of the grit of the game, or it just adds a bunch of bloom and then it doesn't look good. But a re-release or an HD port or something would be killer for this game. I really think that these games deserve more time in the limelight, because 1 is an incredibly good game. 2 is kind of a masterpiece. And Infamous Second Son, the third one, Second Son, the third game, is also really good. I don't think it's as good as the second one. Gameplay-wise, it knocks it out of the water. It's not even close. But it's a different game entirely, released on a different system several years after. And it was one of those PS4 games that they really had to make use of the PS4 features, like the gyro in the controls and the speaker in the controllers. It's all kinds of funny, some of the stuff that they did with that. But I cannot recommend this game enough, given the opportunity to play it or to watch a playthrough of it. Like, honestly, I might do something like that at some point. I don't know. But the game is very good. These are very fun games. They have a comic spin-off for these games. For a while, they had a website where you could do little side content activities, sort of investigative journalism sort of thing for Infamous Second Son. But the first one that kicked it off, Infamous, is a very good game. I would highly recommend checking it out.